What's going on, guys? It's Jazz from California Flyer Co. I've got our new Delta Flyer 350 here, and I'm going to show you how to rig it for kite fishing, and also I'll talk you through a couple of the tips and tricks of how to get it to fish correctly and some things to prolong the life of the bait. So first off, let's start with the terminal tackle that you're going to need to rig the bait. I've got a 5-foot piece of 400 pound here, and this will be used for the leader. And I have a 5/0 treble hook that is 5x strong, and I've got some crimps and chafe tubing and a pair of crimpers and a lighter. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to run this line through the hole that's on top of the head. There's two different ways to rig this bait, one for kite fishing and one for drifting. And when kite fishing, the line is going to run through this hole in the top of the head. So you're going to feed that line through, and it's going to come right out of this hook channel right here. And the first thing that we're going to do is we'll crimp on that hook. So grab your crimp and your piece of chafe tubing, slide that on. Grab your hook, feed that on there, and then we're going to get the lighter and we're going to burn that end and flare it out just a little bit. Then we're going to slide that stuff tight, pull that piece of chafe tubing up tight, and we're going to get our crimps, and we're going to crimp that down. Alright, so your hook is on there now. Now let's go ahead and secure that hook in place. And inside of your kit that you received, there should be some clear plastic bands in a plastic bag. Grab 2 of those, and what we're going to do is we're going to position this hook right on the back of the tail, as far back as it can possibly go. And we're going to get the rubber band, stretch it right up over the tail on that hook, and we're going to double it up right around the back curvature of this hook. So I like to run the first one right there, and then the next one we're going to run the same way but just a little bit farther up on top of the crimp connection right where it connects to the hook. So we're going to double it up again, and now your hook is held right in place. So that's how you want it rigged, exactly like that. And then we're going to go to the top of the leader, and inside of the kits that I've been shipping out for the last couple of months, we've included this, it's a piece of rubber, and the whole concept with this is just to protect the bait from the pressure of that crimp on the top. And I'll show you how that works here in a second, but feed that piece of rubber onto the main line first, and then your crimp, and then your piece of chafe tubing. And you'll feed that up there, have it go right back in the crimp. Same as the first process. Use the lighter, flare out that tip, and that'll just help if your crimp connection is not super strong. It'll just give you a little bit more of a backup. You'll go ahead and crimp that, just like that. And then what we like to do with the rubber stopper is I like to grab a clear plastic band and slip knot it to the main line. So right underneath this crimp, I'll get the rubber band, and I'll just do a simple slip knot right onto the main line. And that'll give you a loop connection right here. And then you'll slide the piece of rubber right up to the loop, and you'll wrap it around there. And then you'll grab the main line and twist. And that's just going to keep that piece of rubber right in place and keep it away from your bait. And then how this whole thing works is when you get a bite and a tuna comes up and grabs this thing, it's going to get these hooks and it's going to break away. And it's going to slide this line, or it's going to slide right up the line, and that piece of rubber there is just going to act as a bit of a pressure dispersion on top of the bait instead of having that crimp get pulled into the top of the bait. And there were a couple of customers who had that happen. So from here on out, our kits are including this piece of rubber to kind of fix that problem. And that's how you're going to rig it for kite fishing. And if you get a bite or if you catch a fish it's pretty simple to reset. You'll just slide this line right back to where you had it and get that hook rig right on the tail. You'll probably break your plastic bands, so just grab a couple more and you'll just rubber band it right up there on the tail, and you just reset the bait and it's ready to go out. So that's how you rig it for kite fishing. It's pretty simple, it's pretty fast, and that's exactly how you are going to want to do it. So I'll take you through the terminal tackle and stuff for drifting, and it's pretty much the same way that you're going to rig it. It's just a little bit different of tackle, and that's just due to the fact that when you're kite fishing, there's no tackle that the tuna is able to see. So if you're going to be drifting it, that line is going to be down in the water and the fish are able to see it, so you do have to downsize quite a bit. And let me go ahead and take this hook rig off and I'll show you how to rig it for drifting. So you're going to want to use, if you're drifting, a bit smaller of a treble hook. We like the BKK Raptor 4.0, and that's a good weight and a good size. And the whole thing with that is just due to the weight of the hook. You need a downsize to get the bait to balance in the water. If you go too heavy on the treble hook, that tail is going to droop out on you. So it's really critical to downsize on the hook if you are going to be doing a drift application. And then as far as the line, we would recommend 130 to 150 pound fluoro, somewhere in the range of 20 to 30 feet. And you're just going to run that line. I'll just use this leader for the example, but you'll run that line through the bottom hole in this hook channel, or if you're going to run it through the nose, you'll run it through the nose and it'll come out the back on the bottom hole in that hook channel. So this is how it's going to look for the drifting application. Same setup with the crimping and your chafe tubing and the positioning of your hook. It's really important to get that hook as far back on the tail as possible, and that's just going to give you a lot more hook exposure, and it'll increase the probability of a hookup if you have a bite that's kind of a half-ass kind of bite. And that's how you rig it for drifting. One thing that's kind of a tip that I would recommend if you are going to be trolling it around is these wings are pretty flexible, and if you do happen to catch a fish, this thing's going to be getting dragged through the water, and there's a ton of pressure on this thing, and the wings are possibly going to come back and they'll be like slightly curved downwards. Cool thing about them is you're able to shape them however you want. So if you're going to be drifting this bait, I recommend to hold the bait just like this and fold up the tips of the wings, and it'll give you kind of a U-shaped curvature, and that'll create a bit of a hole shape, and the bait will plane on top of the water a bit better. And if you're kite fishing, that's also a good thing to do. It gives it a little bit more of a balance on top of the water. So if you catch a fish, you're going to want to reset those wings just how I showed you, and that's one of the tricks with this thing. It's also really important to fish the bait right underneath, if you're kite fishing, right underneath that kite clip. You don't want it to go way back. The bait's going to drag underwater. It's not going to do any damage to the bait, but the presentation is not going to be how you are trying to get it. So you want the bait right underneath, perpendicular to that kite clip. And the cool thing about this thing is I have a couple of drone clips out there, and you're able to see the tuna track this thing, and they go right behind it. In a lot of cases, you won't get a bite until you hop the lure. So if you don't have a drone up, it's obviously a tough thing to see if there's a bunch of tuna that are tracking this thing. But if you just have this thing going out through a breezer and you know it's on top of fish and you're not getting a bite, just use the rod tip and give the rod a couple of pops, just kind of shallow pops, and it'll cause the bait to hop up out of the water, and that usually will cause those things to come up and attack it. So it's kind of like a cat and a piece of thread. Like if it's hopping around, they're going after it and they're pouncing on it. So it's the same kind of concept. Let's go ahead and show you the wings and how those come in and out. cool thing about them is they have a little screw in here, and there's a Phillips head that's included inside your kit. You'll just go to the screw at the front of the wing, and you're going to grab the front of the wing and you're going to rotate it straight back. So you're going to pull up gently and rotate back, and it's going to come right out. And you have your slot right here that the wing goes into. It's got a little hook on the back of this wing that holds it in place. And how to put it in is you start with the bottom of the wing right here, and you'll start that in the channel, and you're going to use your hand and you're going to press it down and towards the tail of the bait. So you'll press it down, and right there it's inside of the groove, and all you have to do is just press on the front of the wing now, and that'll snap it in place. You'll grab the screwdriver and you're just going to gently tighten that in place. If you go too tight, that plastic up there, it will crack. So just snug is all you need. And that's how to take the wings out. If you're going to be keeping it long term in a tackle box, that's probably how I would do it. It's just going to preserve the shape of the wings, because these will hold shape if you do throw it into a drawer and there's a bunch of tools in there and stuff, and the wings are like that. It's going to hold that kind of shape. So if you do want to preserve the paint, if you want to preserve the shape of the wings, I personally would pull out the wings, and you're able to keep those in their own place and keep them flat, and that's just going to prolong the life of the bait and how it's going to look. So that's pretty much the entirety of the tips and tricks on how to fish this thing. If you guys have any questions, please contact us. I'm happy to help you out, and thank you for all the support over the last couple of years, and we'll see you out there on the water.